For more on his life and his legacy, we're going to bring in congressional correspondent Chad Pergram, who's been with us all morning. Chad, you knew the senator well. Just kind of lay out your feelings this morning, how you found out about it, and what your first thoughts were.
Well, my phone rang at 2:35 this morning, and as soon as I heard the phone ring, I've been keeping the ringer up lately, simply because we have a lot of news that breaks overnight, and also because I was expecting to get maybe an update about, frankly, Senator Mitch McConnell, the former majority leader, who has been in the hospital for a while, so I was kind of shocked to hear that it was Graham. In fact, when the person who called me on the other phone, I said Graham, right? Just making sure that that was what we were reporting at that stage. So that was a shock, that nobody saw this coming. And, he had just turned 71 years old. He had been overseas in Ukraine, talking to Vladimir Zelensky, trying to work out some sort of an off-ramp, as he put it, to this lengthy war in Ukraine. And I think that was what was so significant about Lindsey Graham, is that he was always at the center of all of these issues, be it domestic policy, be it foreign policy, be it dealing with the Middle East. I remember the night before the airstrikes back in late February, I had talked to him late that night. And I was kind of struck by the fact that it was already 9:30, 10 o'clock at night in Washington, and they're 8 hours ahead in Tehran, and they hadn't started to drop bombs. And I said, wait a minute, if this is going to be an overnight operation, aren't we a little bit past that right now? But, he was somebody who had been counseling the president, advocating for this. He had indicated that he said, I thought if we don't do it tonight, maybe the next night we have a very tight window to start this. But that demonstrates how he was always toggling between different regions. And frankly, we don't know exactly what led to his untimely death here. But I noticed from time to time that he looked a little bit haggard. And I talked to one source close to him that said that he looked like he was, maybe he had worked himself to death, frankly, and it might have brought on ill health. But this is what he had to say when he was in Ukraine with Volodymyr Zelensky just a couple of days ago.
I've never been more optimistic than I am today that we have the formula to end this war. Help Ukraine be more lethal. Let those supporting Russia to know it's going to be a price to be paid if you keep doing it. And to try to find an off-ramp, not to humiliate Putin, but to end this war so that Ukraine will thrive and survive.
And that's something that Lindsey Graham, unfortunately, won't live to see, whether or not they can sustain peace in Ukraine. Now, the other thing here that I think is interesting about Lindsey Graham was how sometimes he was toggling back and forth with his support or not supporting President Trump. He opposed President Trump running in 2016. He thought he was going to be bad news. He ran himself, at least for a couple of months in 2015, and then got on board. And one of the most dramatic moments, probably, of the first Trump presidency was the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. He had gone through his confirmation hearing, and then came word that there had been allegations of a sexual assault, an alleged sexual assault, allegations made by Christine Blasey Ford back in high school with Brett Kavanaugh. And they had another hearing. This was very similar to what they did in 1991 with Clarence Thomas. They had a hearing already. Then they brought everybody back in several weeks later. They brought in Christine Blasey Ford to hear from her. And all of the Republican senators were kind of treating her with kid gloves. And were it not, and this is the general consensus in the Senate, whether you appreciate the tactics here of Senator Graham or not, that the Kavanaugh nomination was dead in the water and they might have to withdraw the nominee had he not intervened. And he really tore into the Democrats and, frankly, some of his fellow Republicans for how they were handling this. And it's generally thought that he salvaged the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court. Listen.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy.
Now, of course, President Trump saw that and others in the administration, and they voted, sometime later to confirm Brett Kavanaugh onto the Supreme Court. There was another schism between Lindsey Graham and President Trump after the Capitol riot in January 2021. The president, obviously, and he were at loggerheads. In fact, it was Lindsey Graham who, kind of got his hooks into the then Sergeant at Arms for the Senate. He famously said, after the riot at the Capitol, he said, "We gave you guys guns," meaning the Capitol Police, "go use them." And he said, any more support for President Trump? He said, "Count me out." Well, that did not hold. President Trump, resuscitated himself, ran in 2024, and right there at his side was Lindsey Graham. And I think that's the interesting thing. Sometimes this kind of bedeviled Democrats to say, well, wait a minute. On one hand, Lindsey Graham, you speak out against the president, then you toggle back and forth constantly. And I think that was a reflection, whether you like it or not, of Lindsey Graham always understanding where the power center was, be it President Trump, be it, trying to get a bipartisan coalition together in 2013, 2014 to deal with immigration reform, working with, liberal senators as well. That's something that he was able to always do, and also sometimes do it with, we saw a rather angry clip there from Senator Graham, but sometimes do it in good humor off stage. He's somebody who could be very disarming, very funny, and I think that's why it was effective for him, whether you appreciate his style of politics and this, chameleon-like going back and forth on whether or not he supports President Trump or not, guys.
So, Chad, in the last hour, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told us a story about negotiating with the U.S. government about military aid and how he set a certain number. And Lindsey Graham said, no, you need more than that. Obviously, Lindsey Graham was a huge figure in these foreign policy, particularly military debates. Who will fill those shoes for him going forward?
Well, that's what we have to watch, because you just don't come up with the charisma and the connections and the, knowledge that you have in the tip of your little finger like Lindsey Graham. Certain people either have it or they don't. Now, nothing exists in a vacuum. There will be somebody who comes along and probably does that, covering the Senate and the House as long as I have. There are certainly figures like this who emerge, and that's why I like to put this in the historical context. The Senate in particular often functions in a way that there are people who are not in the top ranks of the leadership. Lindsey Graham was never the majority leader, was never the minority leader, but he was somebody who could get things done behind the scenes and, frankly, often in front of the scenes. I think that, some of the model of this, and some people have criticism about this figure, too, but Richard Russell, who the Russell Senate Office Building is named after, was somebody who was never, the majority leader, but kind of knew where everything was all plugged in the United States Senate. And I've seen a few figures like that, not many, but people who come through the Senate and kind of work behind the scenes. Now, Lindsey Graham was somebody who was out in front of the scenes. He was somebody who, he was scheduled to be this morning on Meet the Press, for instance. Yeah. It was routine that we heard from his team that he was going to be in Europe or someplace over the weekend, or maybe they had a 3-day recess or something. And would we want to get him on the phone or something from someplace in the Middle East or Asia or wherever? I mean, this happened all the time. Yeah. So I think that was interesting about Graham, is that there are certain lawmakers who have a good, public relations game, and then others who have a good inside game. Lindsey Graham, at least operationally, had skills at both.
Yeah, no one had more institutional knowledge than Lindsey Graham. No one knew how to work the Senate and had those relationships even across the aisle like Lindsey Graham. And I think that's the power he had to get things done. And I think that was very much a part of his relationship with President Trump. Chad, thank you so much. We'll be checking back in with you.
Thanks, Chad.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.